My name is Susan Marcus, and you are with me on my property, which is called the Kennel House. We're standing in a platform that I built that allowed us to look out over the feature of this property that we're going to talk about today, which is this meadow. This property has been farmed since the late 1600s. I don't know when this piece was taken out of production, but it was sometime about 1950, I think. And from 1950 until I moved here 40 years ago, this meadow was just cut annually so that it didn't succeed to become a forest like the area that surrounds it. So what we're going to do today is talk about the way in which this garden is productive, is both productive and artificially natural, by which I mean it would go to forest if I didn't carefully mow it. But on the other hand, the only thing I really do about this property is mow it and pull things out. I do a lot of pulling things out. Most gardeners are planting things. I pull stuff out. So I thought we'd start here. This is a platform that I built about 10 years ago to give me and my family a place to come to get away from the house, but to also be adjacent to the meadow. If we were here at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a sunny afternoon, this would be a busy highway of damselflies and dragonflies and all kinds of creatures that fly around and around over the tops of these grasses, doing what they do, which is to collect insects. And that's the way in which this property remains productive today. Obviously, this is not a farm land that is where I'm growing crops, but I am serving as a hardware store for the birds who in the spring use all this material to make their nests, and then it turns into their grocery store in the spring, and they collect all the insects that they feed their babies. And then in the fall, it becomes a nursery, and they take the seeds and they run around the meadow and they plant plants for me. They plant those blueberries. They plant a lot of things that are not of my doing. Those are done for me by the creatures who share this land with me. So I thought we'd take a little walk now through the meadow so you get a sense of it. So we'll go down to the back part of the property, which is very wet. So let's go. Now, one of the things that determines what grows where is the soil and the relationship of the land to the sun. So you can see right here, there's a pretty clear line between the herbaceous plants to our right and the little blue stem and the plant that grows through the little blue stem, which is dewberry. And you can see there's practically a straight line here. That doesn't come from my mowing or any cultivation on my part. That is because this soil suddenly at the top of this little rise is so crappy that the only thing it'll grow is little blue stem and dewberry. So I pity the people who tried to farm this, because it must have been really tough. But this is practically my favorite part of the meadow, in part because I have to do so little about it. It's just a question of deciding when it is I mow it, and I don't mow it every year, but I just want to keep the little blue stem growing. And this, of course, is a beautiful rufous color in the fall and the winter, and it stays high like this. So even in the snow, it stands above the snow and it waves. It's great. Now we're heading down. So that was that was one change in the soil. Now we're heading down to the lowest part of this field, where it becomes quite wet. There's just beyond the stone wall is a little stream, and you can't even walk in this lower part without boots, at least like this, because it's so damp. Here's the end of the little blue stem area. So the soil has improved as it comes down this way, and it will now support the growth of all these other plants. These are primarily goldenrods. I have 14 kinds of goldenrod at least. This one is, I think this is rough stemmed. I'm not fully sure. That one is lance leafed. It's a very skinny little leaf there. This is, of course, past its peak common milkweed, which is why I have a good crop of monarch butterflies, because they require that plant as a larval host. Aha! Here is a piece of bittersweet. This is, oh, is it? Yes, that's bittersweet. When I bought this property nearly 40 years ago, the big challenge was, except for this patch of little blue stem, much of the meadow was covered in invasives, notably this bittersweet. And so I had to figure out how to get rid of it. And it took me, well, as you see, I'm not rid of it. And I will never be rid of it, but at least now what I've done, my gardening practice has been to pull all those things out. I have bittersweet, black swallowwort, autumn olive, Japanese bamboo, Japanese honeysuckle. We'll see all of that as we go. But anyway, this portion of the field now is very wet in its feet. Underneath. So this grows Joe pieweed. Unfortunately, we're here at a time when this garden is not in flower. So you can't really get a good sense of what it's like in August, September, and October. But this field is full of yellow goldenrods and pink Joe pieweeds. It's really quite a beautiful sight. And it also is where I can grow blueberries. So I have the blueberries, the tall bush blueberries there that are the native non-cultivar things. You can see the blueberries coming along here. These were planted by the birds. These aren't my plantings. And these will be eaten by the birds. And then I will have more blueberry plants wherever they poop those seeds out. But I do have cultivars in this house. These I prevent the birds from eating these through this structure covered with all this mosquito netting. And you can see, if we come down to the end here to its entrance, oh, there's some. See, oh, they're coming along. I'll unlock it here. I'll take this clothespin off, so maybe you can look in there. This is as much farming pretty much as I do beyond my vegetable garden. But by protecting these blueberries, I have blueberries there early morning early middle season and late blueberries. So this is a very fun place for my grandchildren to collect their breakfast cereal topping. Locked. Okay, Now we'll walk back up through the meadow. It's going to be pretty much a repeat of what we just saw because there is a huge amount of goldenrod in this meadow. So much so that sometimes in the early fall I wish for a different color than yellow, but that's not what I was given here. So there's some other little plants. This one is called Butter and Eggs. This is a very weedy looking thing, but it's very nice in a bouquet. You cut it and it comes inside. Oh, and there's another piece of bittersweet down there. I should have brought my scissors. This is right now, this is a daycare center for a newly born deer, a fawn. He usually spends his days sitting in the meadow right here. He's all alone. I don't really understand. I don't understand how a fawn gets to be an adult, but he spends most of his days in here. And when I come along, I flush him out, and he looks at me in horror. But he's not here. He hasn't been here the last few days. Maybe he's gone to high school now. I don't know. All right, so this is the little blue stem. I do cut a portion of this every year, but not the whole thing. I cut most of the meadow every year, but never the entirety of the meadow. And that is my big management problem, figuring out when it has to be a time when it's dry enough, when all this is gone to, when all this is as dead as it can possibly be, because the mower likes to chomp up dead stuff, not green stuff. But it has to be dry enough so the mower can go through it. And then we have to decide where birds are nesting. We avoid those areas. It's a bigger job than you might think. It's not just saying, oh, it's Saturday, I think I'll mow the meadow. I'm sorry there's not a single dragonfly out today. Okay, now you can see that the platform we were standing on is actually part of my using this ground productively. It is, in fact, support for a solar panel array. The solar panels on top of what I call the folly, which is what I call that thing, feed my main house. But I also have panels on top of the guest house. That guest house is the old barn. And that's how I know this property was not farmed after 1950, because it was in 1950 that ceased to be a barn and became a guest house. So then I don't know, then I don't know whether they hayed this field or what they did. But anyway, so this is my attempt to capture all of or some of the sunlight that falls here, that keeps this meadow alive, but also provides most of the power, most of the year. All of the power from about May until October. All the power I use in the front house, and most of the power the rest of the year. I have a geothermal system, so in the winter I need a lot of power to run those big pumps that bring the water up out of the ground. Here are more of the blueberries that just are randomly planted by the birds. I had friends walking with me in this meadow last night, just about 6:30, and one noticed how full of insects it was. And that is an important part of why I leave it the way it is, because I am trying to support as many different flies, bumblebees, bees, butterflies, moths, dragonflies, damselflies, whatever, as I possibly can. So many of those creatures are in serious trouble. Okay, I'm going to take you, we'll go up to the bee yard. Oh, well, maybe I should say something in front of the bayberry. In the years before when I wasn't living here full time, I just had big portions of the meadows mowed by the same guy who mowed the lawn. And he really didn't know any more than I knew about what was growing out here. And then when I moved up here full time, I joined the Rhode Island Wild Plant Society, and I began to learn more about what these plants were. And I suddenly realized that this wasn't just any old thing. This was a bayberry. This is what the colonists and the Indians before them, the Native Americans before them, used to make candles and I think mostly candles, but anyway. And so I decided I would never mow this. So now this is about 10 years of bayberry bush growth here, mixed in with a few, of course, goldenrods and milkweeds. So from here you can see the beehive. I've been a beekeeper for about, since the early 80s. But the last 2 years I haven't been keeping bees because I had Italian bees and they died off every winter, and it was just so depressing. I took a couple years off. Also, I'm getting old, and it's very heavy to work a hive. So I stopped for a couple of years, but this year I have a new kind of bee, a bee called Carnolian. He comes from Central Europe, not from Italy, and I'm hoping one of her characteristics is that she'll live through the winter. So we'll see whether this hive makes it through the winter. Since it's cloudy, oh no, never mind, you'll never see that. It was a skipper. So do you want to go see if the bees are coming? Yes, okay, let's go. It might be that it's too early in the day or not sunny enough. They might not be flying in and out, but we'll see. Oh no, they're working. So to see them, you have to look right at the entrance there. They're coming in and out. I block their entrance to keep field mice and other things from going in there to bother their honey, but it makes it a little harder for them to get in and out. This Carnolian bee is smaller and darker than the Italian honeybee, and I noticed that I have a lot of Italian honeybees on the property. I think that could be that some of my bees from past years have gone wild and have managed to live through the winter even without being in my hives, or maybe because they weren't in my hives, I don't know. All right, this portion of the meadow was the most intensely invaded with bittersweet. My father, when he was alive, my father and I would come out here with a scythe that someone left us when I bought this house. It's an old 18th century tool. It's not very sharp anymore, but it's a big thing with a long handle and a crooked blade. And we'd come out here and we'd swing that thing and try to chop the bittersweet down, or we'd dig it out by the roots or something. And I think we just made for years, I think we just made it easier for the bittersweet to grow because we never seemed to make a dent in its presence. And then when I moved here full time, I made friends with an agronomist at URI, and he taught me how to safely, or as safely as possible, apply an herbicide. And so for about 2 years, I used a triclopyr, which is a specific herbicide that that doesn't deal with the grasses, so all the grasses were completely safe. It only deals with broad-leafed plants. So I came out here and I sprayed very carefully the bittersweet, and I have to say that 2 years of doing that made a huge difference, and I managed to protect enough of the other things that are growing here so that now this field is predominantly not bittersweet. But I'm very glad I don't have to be using that herbicide anymore. All right, so I thought I would just show you one other thing down here at the end, and then we could go look at my more formal gardens as a closing. Oh, here's some of our work from last night. We pulled some bittersweet out last night. Forgot to take it in. I planted this hedgerow of evergreen trees, including that blue spruce, which is not native to here, but I do happen to love the color variation that it introduces. These were trees that I bought in a package from the Extension Service at URI. They came wrapped in newspaper, and I swear they were no bigger than a pencil. And so for about 5 years, I had to grow them in a nursery setting to make sure that they didn't get mowed down or something. But I planted all these, and I planted that entire row of evergreens that runs behind the folly as well. So I wanted to border my property completely in trees. And that used to be just it was just a split rail fence, and it wasn't enough protection from my neighbor's driveway. So you see, if you have a little patience, you can transform a piece of land. And you can even be pretty ignorant, as I am. This is my favorite goldenrod. This is called tall goldenrod, and it will get to be taller than I am, and then it has a beautiful fluorescence, yellow of course. But anyway, I just have this one little piece of tall goldenrod. It's the only place in the meadow, and as I say, I haven't planted anything out here, so everything that is out here is either seed material that was in the ground or has been contributed by my co-workers, the birds. I should mention my human co-workers, because I do have a person who mows very intelligently for me. He spots all kinds of things and mows around them. And then I have a couple of young people who year after year come and work for the 2 months before the meadow starts growing in the spring to help eradicate the bittersweet and any other invasives. So they come a couple hours a week. I could use them full-time every day. But this year with COVID, it was one advantage for me is that I spent a lot more time out here digging up the invasives, and I had more help from them. I couldn't manage. I know this property looks as though I should just lie in the hammock all day and not do any work, but actually it takes a lot of work to keep it looking this ratty. It's a special feature. And here, oops, mosquito. This is another grass that that actually, now that I said I never plant anything, I have to correct that. I had a septic field dug out next to the folly years ago, and it was planted with little blue stem, switchgrass, and bird's field trefoil, which we'll see a little bit of. The switchgrass outcompeted the little blue stem and the trefoil, and so now I have a little bit of, this is again the work of the birds, I have a little bit of switchgrass coming up. This is, of course, this very ordinary grass that grows along highways and things, but it is actually quite pretty when it blooms, and I think its green leaves are quite graceful at this stage, but I don't want too much of it. This is another, as long as we're talking about grass, this is another grass. This is, oh, and you see, I don't know whether you can see that, but you can see how much pollen there is in this. It gets to be quite, this field can be full of a lot of pollen at different seasons. Actually, I was going to tell you this is actually Timothy, I think. I was going to tell you it was velvet grass, but that was wrong. And this little hill, part of the reason I planted these trees is this hill was covered with this Japanese honeysuckle, which, as you see, I still have not managed to eliminate. But I changed the habitat enough so that I got it to stop growing underneath these trees. Now I just have to deal with it in this open area. Maybe this will be the project, if we're still in the COVID season next year. I'll try to get this out. Oh, and here's another nasty. This is mugwort. This is Artemisia. A terrible plant. Oh. This hill was covered with Japanese knotweed, and after the triclopyr did nothing, so I didn't spray it anymore. It did nothing to deal with the Japanese knotweed, even though it was supposed to. So this is just the result of years of cutting it back and pulling it out. And now, because the road is there, I've planted it with shrubs to try and block the road a little bit. These are most of these are plants from the Wild Plant Society. I have a low grow rhubarb and this viburnum and a hydrangea and winterberry. Okay, this is the front to that extension. This is the front of the 1820s farmhouse that I bought 40 years ago. It faces south, which is what buildings did in 1820, but even somehow between 1820 and when I became the owner of this property, it had lost an entry from this side, so you always had to come in from the back. Anyway, it had two little garden areas in front of it when I bought it. I don't know whether it did in 1820, but it did by the mid-80s. And when I renovated, I had these gardens extended a little bit, moved the stone walls out. I liked the proportions that I used better than what had been here before. And then I planted these, and this is, here you can see, this is one of the problems of being here. This is what the deer will do. They will come and eat pretty much anything, which is why I have this very elegant netting over a portion of it. I should just tell you about these boxwoods. because they are not native and not from Rhode Island. These are plants I grew from 6 plants that were given to me by friends who stayed with us in my house in Washington, D.C. I had a little tiny garden in Georgetown, and they gave me 6 boxwoods. And when I realized I was going to be leaving Washington, I decided that I liked the boxwoods, and I certainly loved my friends, and both of them by that time had died. And so I made clippings from those, and I grew 17 boxwoods. I've given some away, but all of them have survived. So it's pretty good, I think. Okay, so do you have stomach for more? Do you want to see the, okay. So one of the things that I've done is that I have plenty of meadow, and I have developed over time a small yearning for something that's a little bit more organized. So I have encroached on the meadow a little bit by planting. This is not at all a formal garden, but this is planted. This is not goldenrod. I have planted these agastaches and the monardas, this red plant that the hummingbirds love. These grow, and this I planted these things, and then I just let them do whatever they want to do. I have these, this is a sad time to look at this. These are penstemons in seed now. But those seeds mean I'll have more penstemons next year. This is my very cultivated herb garden, which is just adjacent to the kitchen, so I can be making a salad and come out and pick whatever I need for that garden. This is another extension package, a package I bought from the URI extension. This is a arrowwood viburnum, and the package had 5 plants in it, 2 arrowwood viburnums that are still here in the yard. What do you call it? Oh dear. I can't remember. Anyway, it's now, I'll think of it in a minute. It's a plant that's now considered invasive, and I planted that one too, but I've moved that. And let's see, that's only 3. Oh yes, that's right. It also had a maple leaf viburnum in them. So I planted those as little sticks here in a line here, and they've grown up like this. Okay, so this is the old barn to the farmhouse. Oh, and there, I don't know whether you'll get here in time, there's a hummingbird back there on the monardas, right in front of, he's behind that black chair. There he is. Whoa. Anyway, so when I plant a garden, this is what it looks like. Some people might argue this is hardly a garden, but these are all things I have selected. I have put them in here. Some, like these black-eyed Susans, come in. They plant themselves, and I don't always pull them out. I should mention maybe that when I bought the property, it was really a farm yard. It was just grass and maple trees. But they also had some, the lily that you're looking at now, that roadside lily, was one of the plants that was here, and they had a few hostas. So that was it. I've added all the rest of this vegetative material, for better or worse. But my idea is to try and make it, even though it's cultivated, to have it look as uncultivated as possible. I think I succeed in that part. Oh, do you want to see the vegetable garden? Yeah. Okay. So this is my token farm. I grow some raspberries there, and as you can see, it's full peak raspberry season right now. And then I have this little vegetable garden, which last year was the meal plan for a groundhog. But this year, the man who mows the meadow and works with me on other projects put in 1/4-inch hardware cloth that goes down 2 feet, which is low enough to keep him out of here. And in fact, I think he has moved on to somebody else's property. I am very happy because last year I didn't get a single zucchini. And I think I didn't get any zucchinis. The only thing he left me were cucumbers and tomatoes. But anyway, this is my garden for eating from in the summer. It's I don't grow very many kinds of things, but you know, I grow what I grow. And I eat pretty much everything. And this year I've even got, good, these tomatoes are starting to get ripe. Excellent. I can't wait for that. I eat these until October. Oh, don't focus on those leaves that show the wilt. Okay, so we've now come pretty much around. I do have a policy where I try not to let anything go off the property. So I do have a pretty extensive composting system. I try to keep a lot of the material which is not invasive. All the invasive stuff leaves the property, but things that aren't invasive I throw in there, and then I have new dirt all the time, every year. And there's only one other garden to show you, which is what I call the winterberry garden. I was at Allen's Seed one day recently buying something, and a man was in there saying, I want something to get rid of the clover in my lawn. What will get rid of the clover in my lawn? And I felt like saying to him, the clover in your lawn, see the difference? The grass dies and the clover lives in the drought. So I'm all in favor of the clover in the lawn. This is a button bush, and here you can see some, this is going to be very populated with bees. I don't know. Here's the bumblebee. I think that's just that's the bombus bumblebee, I think. But I also saw one of my honeybees. This is a bee that's, I don't know what it is. Anyway, if you stand here long enough, you'll see a lot of flying creatures. They really love these button bushes. And these I brought from Brian Maynard at URI. His students had grown these. I bought 2 little pots about 5 years ago, and they've grown into these great big bushes. And I should say that Brian told me their feet should be wet. And I said, well, I'm going to put them in a place where their feet won't be wet. And they have, even though their feet aren't wet, they've done very well. This is I'm sure he's not going to show up today, but there's a hummingbird moth that likes these. A hummingbird moth is a large, it's a huge moth that looks like a hummingbird, ergo its name. These sadly don't last very long. They're only here for about a week. See, these are already going by. Okay, this is it. This little section, this portion of the house is what I added on. And I kept this side as a not full-scale croquet court because my mother was a wicked croquet player, and I thought that would be fun to have a croquet court, but now it's getting smaller and smaller, and we don't play croquet here very much anymore. So this is my last garden. It's the winterberry garden. Those bushes, those shrubs are winterberries. Oh, the lilacs at the end above the wall are lilacs that I moved from the other side of the house. My neighbor across the way said to me, "You know, Susan, you really ought to have all your plants on wheels," because I do a considerable amount of moving them around. But these were really struggling on the other side of the house, and I moved them over here, spread them out, and now I have this nice buffer from the parking area. And this is my last, these are echinaceas here. And again, they are popular with the bumblebees. So that is pretty much my garden. Okay, so thank you very much for coming to the Kennel House Meadow Garden. A couple years ago, this garden was on the Cross Mills Library tour, and over 100 people came to this garden, which I thought was very impressive. Good work, Cross Mills Library. And this session has also been for the Cross Mills Library. This is the COVID online version of the Cross Mills Library garden tour. So again, thank you very much for coming, and I hope to see you in person soon.